facilitate meaningful, useful discussion. There's just a couple points I want to make sure to point out. In the offline, the meeting, the traditional meeting piece, we always want to attempt to create an environment that is conducive to people working together. Food is a great way to do that. Having cookies, snacks. A lot of cities are actually now doing like dinner or lunch meetings where they're providing hot dogs or hamburgers or doing a grill out to get people involved. So food is an excellent way to do that. Can get a little cost prohibitive sometimes, but we actually in Marion did cook out in the park, and it was pretty successful. So there's ways to make that work, and then the environment also extends to the meeting room. So using things like the big colorful Post-its and colorful markers, and big things like this that you can post up on the walls, ideas come in, and creating this kind of fun, creative environment that's got a lot of different levels of transparency. People's participation is really effective. What's not as effective is if I'm just the one person taking notes, as people share ideas and nobody else can see those notes, and nobody else sees what goes back to the planning effort. So making that process transparent is really important. Enabling and encouraging participation. Jay actually did a great job today, you probably noticed, but of making sure that everybody in the room felt like they had a chance to speak, whether that's helping to pull those folks that are a little bit more shy out and say, hey, Nick, what do you think about this? In using facilitation techniques to make sure that everybody speaks, even if you're in the back of the room, you still have a chance, and that's moving around the room. It's getting to know people when they walk into the room, so you have more of a personal connection. So if something comes up like parks, and you spent 5 or 10 minutes talking to them before the meeting started, you may find out they like parks. And that's an opportunity to facilitator, then pull that person into the meeting because you found an interest that they attend the meeting for. And then this is a big thing, is engagement versus persuasion. So as facilitators of meetings, there are very few times when we should be persuading. Now, if it's in the best interest of health, welfare, those kinds of things, absolutely. That's a time to be persuasive. But if it's things that the community has come up with, and then we've taken those and developed, whether it be concepts or improvement projects, that we need to be careful as community members, facilitators, of selling concepts versus listening to feedback. And I think we, as planning practitioners, I know I'm guilty of it a lot, is we come up with a great concept, and because we don't want to get criticism, we'll defend whatever that particular concept is, rather than listening and saying, that's a great point. That may affect your business. How can we work together to make sure that we mitigate that as much as possible? And that goes for everybody. And I think cities too, a lot of cities we work with, city staff feels like oftentimes they're in a position of being attacked in some of these meetings. And so your first defense mechanism is to say, no, here's why we did it. This is why, and this is why you should like it, and this is why it's good for you. Rather than saying, you know what, you may have some good feedback there. Let's listen, let's talk about it, let's foster an environment that is sharing versus persuading. So I think it's always important to keep that in mind. And then facilitation extends to online. So you don't want to free-for-all in your online tools. The same principle of creating a good environment in a meeting applies to your online piece. You got to create a place online that people can provide meaningful, useful information. And there's different tools to do that. Jay talked about SurveyMonkey. That's a web tool that is very meaningful. It's very targeted. It's a survey that you can use. And using those different things appropriately, because there's a little less control on the online piece. So you're not in control of what somebody else might say. And some people may feel more comfortable putting something on a web piece than they do in a meeting. And so you've always got to be careful, but you don't ever want to, I don't think, get into the job of heavily policing and dictating content. Our general rule of thumb for our tools is that if it be appropriate in a traditional meeting, whether or not you agree with it, but if it would be appropriate in a traditional meeting, then it should also be appropriate online. And so it may be something that's not agreeable, but we can't remove those things just because we don't like them. And then the last thing is, you've got a good website has 3 minutes of somebody's time. So you get 3 minutes, and quite frankly, you've got about 15 seconds from when someone lands on your webpage to bring them in. And then you've got about 3 minutes once they get in to actually get something meaningful. And so the best of the best websites, actually, you make it 5 minutes, average time. And so we have to, when we're doing these kind of things, web tools, whatever they are, websites or tools, make them inviting, informational, but not overwhelming. Simplicity is always a good rule when it comes to high-tech tools and public involvement. We tend to overthink those items. And so working within those constraints and knowing that people have even a shorter attention span on the web than they do in person is really important. Dave, you can close it down here.